Do unto others as you would have done unto you. If you've grown up in a country with predominantly liberal values and/or a country with prominent Christian cultural roots, you've had this saying impressed so far into your brain that a blind mortician could read it like the world's most anemic book. However, if you've actually spent any amount of time in the real world, you'll know that being nice just as often brings about as much misfortune as reciprocal returns. Something I wanted to mention in another script I just finished writing, but which I ultimately decided to omit for the sake of brevity, is Kohlberg's not nearly famous enough hierarchy of moral development. Critically, the fact that he himself determined, back in 1958, that the average Western man only reaches stage 4 by age 18 and the average Western woman caps out at stage 3. Again, before anyone lines up to huck rotten textual tomatoes at me, these are averages. But the important thing to recall about averages is that they still represent the majority of a population, usually around 65 to 70%. The reason I bring this up in this video is because the idea of do unto others as you would have been done to you only really works in a high trust and high respect social environment, meaning everyone around you needs to both respect you enough to not mistake your charity for their entitlement or your tolerance for their superiority. And everyone needs to trust that there will be consequences for anyone who abuses or misuses the system. Just in case you haven't noticed, neither of these is true in Annus Nostri Ludovici, 2025. I've said before, and I'll say again, that religion does not, by itself, induce cultural or moral cohesion within a society. That role falls entirely on the community in which the religion resides. In essence, religion might very well be the moral mortar of a society, but communities are the bricks. Culture is nothing but an adhesive. With nothing to adhere, it's just a sticky pile of gloop on the floor. Just so it is for religion. And also for relationships. The easiest analogy I like to use for which is a house, which I realize is also a remote abstraction for a lot of people nowadays. Everyone says that relationships are founded on trust. This is false. They are adhered by trust and respect, yes, but without anything substantial there to adhere, they dissolve into a hot, sticky mess, especially whenever sex is involved. A house's foundation alone is not a home. You obviously don't begin and end the construction there, since nobody would want to live on an uncovered concrete slab. But that foundation must be there in order for the actual construction to begin at all. And what is that foundation, you may wonder? Well, it's what I've said ad nauseum on this channel. Tangible. Rewards. It's the answer to the question of, what do I get out of this deal? What makes the relationship worth my time and effort in the first place? In a marriage, for the men, this predominantly revolves around gaining sexual access. For the woman, it's generally about receiving commitment in the form of protection, provision, and status boosts in exchange for sexual exclusivity and consistent availability. That's how marriage was set up. And when done and understood that way, it works. Everything else, all the love and the meaning and the family and the godly religious purpose, necessarily proceeds from that transactional base. I know people are going to want to fight me on that, but saying that marriage isn't about sex is like saying that business isn't about money or that war isn't about killing people. Yes, you shouldn't start a war purely because you feel like going on a killing spree, and the actual end and aim of a business should be to provide value to the community, not to harvest as much of its value for as little in exchange as possible. But just as how a productive enterprise that doesn't turn a profit is called a charity, not a business, and just as how an international conflict wherein nobody dies is called politics, not war, an intersexual bond that doesn't begin with and result in a continual and mutual exchange of male utility for coitus is not a marriage, but a friendship. And in case you've been living under a rock for the last 10 or so years, reciprocity in all of the aforementioned arenas has been in steady decline, pretty much for as long as anyone presently living can remember. And this is my point for this venture. Reciprocity and the virtuous integrity thereof is only possible in a world where everybody believes they will receive an equitable change in value in return for that which they give, and in which they believe there will be meaningful consequences for violating that agreement. When neither of these is believed to be the case, generally speaking, then the rule of thumb naturally shifts from do unto others as you would have done unto you to do unto others as they do unto you. In other words, repay kindness with kindness and evil with evil. Or, in other words, the ideal karmic form of fairness and justice every primate, human and otherwise, instinctively believes in and works to execute upon the world, which is where our moral stunting comes back into the picture. Clinging to legal scaffolding or hiding in the principled attic won't save you when your house is built on waterfront sand and the tide is coming in. But as usual, that's all just been my humble opinion. Take it for what it's worth, and if you think it's worth it, Pick up a book or some of my new Lupus Animus merch, or even just clicking the like or subscribe buttons on your way out the door helps me out immensely in fighting against the algorithmic currents. Also, be sure to look me up on these alternative sites to spit in YouTube's eye. And until next time, as always, stay safe, stay sane, and remember, respect is the currency of all human relationships. And just as with any other form of currency, if you have to demand it, you don't deserve it. Peace be upon you.